We will now welcome our next speaker, Alan Barnette. Alan Barnette is a lifelong resident of Winchester, Tennessee, and is father of 4 beautiful children, 2 adult young men and 2 young daughters. Mr. Barnette is a person in long-term recovery for 15 years. He works out of the office of Franklin County Prevention Coalition and the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. He is the Project Lifeline Recovery Coordinator covering 9 counties in southern Middle Tennessee. Mr. Barnette has been with Lifeline since 2013. He also works with the Franklin County Juvenile Court System, facilitating moral recognition therapy, which is a 12-step cognitive behavioral health program. He is a certified peer recovery specialist and a CPRS supervisor. He is certified to facilitate DUI school and drug and alcohol educational classes. He is a board member of the Tennessee Alliance for Drug Endangered Children. Mr. Barnette has made an impact on the communities and families throughout the region that he covers, as well as across the state. His statewide slogan is "Recovery is the New High." Please welcome Alan Barnette.
Hey, good morning. How are you guys? This is kind of weird for me. I've never done a presentation Zoom call. I don't know who I'm talking to. I don't know who I'm looking at or any of that, but I'm a person that's in long-term recovery, and I struggled with substance use a little over 20 years. And next Wednesday, I'll be celebrating 15 years of sobriety. And I mean, everybody's pathway to recovery is different. I know that for me and myself, I think it's been rather easy because I didn't want to go back to that dark place that I once was at. And I heard a presentation earlier, and it was talking about stigma, and I was kind of forced into recovery. It was either spend 4 years in the prison or 90 days in jail. And you already know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take them 90 days of jail to keep from having to go to prison for 4 years. And I had done prison time before. 29 days too long. I had surpassed my red date, which means my eligibility for parole. I went to prison on a 2-year sentence, being a habitual traffic offender. I didn't want to go back there. That was something that I didn't want to be a part of. But whenever I went to jail, something happened. And, I hear a lot of times people say that, they don't want it, they'll never quit. They're never going to change. But the entire time that I was using, I didn't want to use it. I was always looking for an avenue to get out. I didn't know what that avenue was. I didn't know how I was going to get up out of that darkness. And I had gotten into some trouble in 2004, went on the run for about 1.5 years. And finally, I got the money up to turn myself in because I didn't want to go to jail and not be able to get out. I figured it out once I posted bond or whatever, or what I was going to do. But once I got the money up to turn myself in and make bond, I did that. And I found a lawyer. And, I was trying to make a deal to see the amount of least jail time that I was going to get. And the first lawyer that I talked to, he said, "I don't want to represent you." He said, "Because I'm going to get you out of this and you're going to go right back into the same old thing that you had been doing." And I thank that attorney today. He turned me over to another attorney, and he just recently passed away, but he introduced me to recovery court. And when they told me about recovery court, and they told me that I couldn't do drugs or anything like that, and I was going to be drug tested multiple times a week, I thought that was great. But whenever they told me that I could not drink when I was in the program, that's like all the weight in the world was lifted up off of me, because I never got high unless I was under the influence of alcohol. So I went and I saw drug court a few times, went and visited just to see what it was about, get a feel for it. And each and every time I went, I saw people that I had gotten high with, that I went to school with, that I had sold drugs with, the whole 9 yards, walking across the platform, going up to see the judge. They're looking good, they're healthy, they're working every single day. Whenever I saw that, that was something that I wanted. And I reached out for it. I didn't exactly know what it was, but I was willing to grab a hold of it because it looked good. And I saw that it was good because those individuals were prospering. And that's something that I hadn't did. And then on the day of sentencing, um, I'd asked the judge for a little time to say goodbye to my family, my kids, and that sort of stuff. And he gave me six days to turn myself in. And that was October 26th of 2006. And no sooner I left from court, I went and picked up my 6 pack of beer. I already had a joint rolled up because I knew I wasn't going to jail. I already had, and I started my day out like always, and not thinking I had recovery court the same night. My sentence had started, and I showed up for recovery court under the influence. And whenever I walked up to my probation officer, she smelled the alcohol on me and she laid into me pretty good. And she told me that I better be at home by 9 o'clock because she was going to send an officer out to do curfew check on me. 9 o'clock came, officer knocked on the door, and there I was. I said, I'm here. And I was high as a kite too at that point in time. And he said, yep. He said, I see. He said, but you're leaving with me. I said, my time, it's not my time. He said, oh yes, it is. She signed a warrant on you. So I had to go to jail that night, and I wasn't ready. And I was mad at the world. I cussed everybody out, called them crooks, called them crooked people, crooked society, judicial system. That's what I did. And I stood firm to that for about 3 or 4 days until I started sobering up. And it's probably maybe 8 to 10 days that I was in there. There was a man getting out that I knew. I'd sold dope to him. I'd smoked dope with him. The whole 9 yards. I've known this man my entire life, but whenever he got out, he walked past me and he placed the Bible right next to me where I was sitting at. And I looked at this man like, who are you to leave me a Bible? But this man, he had walked on out the door and he was gone. There was nothing else that I could say to him. But I held on to that Bible. I carried it up to my cell with me. And, as days started or kept going by, I started hearing voices. And I know where those voices were coming from. And then one day I got up and I started walking towards where the voices were coming from. Lo and behold, they was coming from that Bible. And I picked that Bible up and I started reading in Matthew. And as I started reading, man, I got a little ray of light. And that little ray of light was something that I hadn't seen in over 20 years. And that looked good to me. And I wanted more of it. So the more and more I read, the brighter that light got. And I'm in jail on a 90-day sentence. And it was my 41st day in there. And this is after I had started building a relationship with myself. I started building a relationship with God. Um, I started talking about the things that I was gaining from the Bible while I was in my pod to my fellow inmates in a negative environment. I had a prayer, 41 days. I asked God, I said, God, let me up out of here. I said, I know I got to go to treatment from here, but I'm ready for that. I'm ready for treatment so I can hurry up and get on the path that you have set for me. Day 42, my probation officer, she came down to the jail. She had that cup ready and she also had some paperwork. I guess that was just the process of recovery court. Wanted to make sure I was clean and all of that. And I was. Every time I saw somebody firing up in the jail, in the cell, or whatever, I ran to a corner. Because I didn't want to mess up. I messed up the very first night and I didn't want to mess up no more. And I didn't want to jeopardize that opportunity. of me getting better and becoming who I am today. And everything went well. Passed the drug test, filled out the paperwork. She said, "Well, y'all go back to your cell now." And got ready to walk through the door. And she said, "Oh yes." She said, "You guys need to call home and have your parents or your loved ones to bring your clothes to recovery court," which was the next night, day 43, because you're going to leave from drug court to go to treatment. I threw my hands up in the air right there. I asked for it, and he gave it to me. And I was sincere about what I asked for. The night I went to go to treatment, day 43, there was a lady that stood up beside me. And she's near and dear to my heart still to this day. But she stood up beside me right here, and she shared her story during drug court. And the whole time she was telling her story, she was crying because she had lost her child to this disease of addiction. And I'm like, man, why don't somebody stand up and give this lady a hug, do something? And her husband, who was the recovery court judge at the time, he was conducting court, so he couldn't do anything. But whenever she finished sharing her story and everything, something said, just stand up and give that lady a hug. And I did. And whenever I embraced her, it's like something come over me, and I just said that I'm gonna do everything that I possibly can do to make sure that this doesn't happen to another mother, because that mother that was standing right there could have very easily been my own. So I wanted to give back. I didn't know exactly how I was going to give back or in what capacity, but I had made a start whenever I first got incarcerated in the jail cell. I wanted to make a difference in my community. I started making a difference with my recovery court peers, so to speak. So I would just always share about, the things that God was putting on my heart and the things that I was seeing. And whenever I got the treatment, that's all I talked about was, the things I was gaining from the Bible, what God was putting on my heart. And I'm starting to learn to be honest and true to myself, and overcoming fears and all of that sort of stuff. And my counselor at treatment, she said, "Alan," she said, "until you get out of your religion," she said, "it's gonna be hard for you to make it, brother." I'm like, "What you mean?" So I pondered on that for at least half a day. And I remembered, in the Bible, it was telling me that I had to be afraid of anything. So I went back to my counselor and I said, "What you mean by that?" She said, "Alan, there's nothing wrong with your religion." She said, "But until you start talking about what got you here, it's going to be hard for you to make it." So I started talking about those things that I had bottled up for so long, those deep, dark nights that I participated in, the hurts and the habits, the pains, the disloyalty and things like that that I had brought on to myself as well as others. Um, my life really took off. And then, I was married. I was had my youngest daughter whenever I first got. Well, actually, I had both of my little girls whenever I first got into recovery, and I got married. That lasted for about a year, and I got on a roller coaster with her, and it didn't look good. And it come to a point to where, you know, she had started drinking and stuff like that. And, I said, well, maybe if I start drinking, maybe we'll get back together. And it was a New Year's Eve night, 2012, I believe it was. And we was gonna get together. Actually, we did get together. But I said, if she gonna drink tonight, I'm gonna drink with her. I had my mind made up. And I walked into the store to purchase the alcohol. But for some reason, I walked over towards the produce section first. I don't know why, but I did. I guess getting the nerve up to go over to the alcohol section to get the alcohol. But On my way over to the alcohol section, something said, look up. And whenever I looked up, there was this lady walking through the door. Who was that lady? That lady that stood up right here next to me sharing her story. And we stopped and we talked. We started shedding tears like what we always do. And right then and there, I said, man, it ain't even worth it. And I walked my butt on out that door. And here I am still to this day, clean and sober. Next next Wednesday, I'll actually be celebrating 15 years of sobriety. I was just telling the kid the other day, I was 18 years of smoking crack cocaine every day and drinking and under the influence of multiple other things every single day for 18 years. And if I could spend 15 years every single day not getting high, not doing anything, not putting anything into my body to stay well, then that kid, they can do it too. That kid was just 16 years old. So, after me and my second ex-wife, after we had split up, I just started looking for different different ways of employment, different things that I could do because I was a brick and block mason. I was tired of breaking my back. I wanted to socialize more with other people. And to be honest with you, I was more or less just looking to get in an environment where I could meet other women. That didn't work out. That didn't work out at all. I put in a resume for Nissan. Nissan called me. They started asking me all of these questions, and everything worked out until they asked me if I've ever been convicted of a felony. And I said, yep, but I'm about 5 years. Click it. They hung the phone up on me. I was hot and I was sweaty, and I really felt bad because I told the truth, and it shouldn't be like that. I told the truth. I was honest, but they didn't give me an opportunity to talk about where I'm at today. They hung the phone up on me. And that bothered me. That bothered me for weeks. But each and every day for those weeks, I said, God has something else in store for me that is better. And within 6 months, the director of my prevention coalition, she had given me a call. I built a relationship with her because I was facilitating the MRT program uh, through juvenile court for the coalition. And this is something that my probation officer, who threatened me to send me to prison, had sent me to Memphis to be certified to facilitate because that was what she saw something worthy in me. And she sent me there to receive that certification. And, I started facilitating that with the coalition as well as juvenile recovery, well, not juvenile recovery court. That's something that we did help install here in the county of Franklin County, but juvenile court. And she said, well, a position has come open through the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. And, it's going to cover multiple counties, but it's more or less doing the same thing that you're already doing. She said, it's yours if you want it. Doing something that I'm passionate about or continue laying brick and block. Give me that I'm passionate about. So God did have something else better in store for me, what I got today. So, I continue to stay clean. I continue to stay sober. I continue to press forward, and I continue to believe that God has something else greater in store for me. And that's where I'm at today, Project Lifeline. I don't know. I did send in a PowerPoint. I don't know if it's up. If you guys can see it. There we are. One second, guys. Okay. As you guys can see who I am, I've been with Project Lifelines since 2013, and you guys can take 2 seconds and get my information and stuff if you need it. You're welcome, Alicia. I love sharing my story. I love talking about where I've been and where I'm at and where I'm getting to. Okay, you guys, you did hear a little bit about my journey and how I got here. I didn't go all the way back from childhood to where I started at, but through my recovery, I've become hopeful, employable, dependable. I'm a father. I'm selfless, and I'm trustworthy. And I look at selfless here. I'm also selfish, and I have to be. And I'm not being arrogant whenever I say that, but I got to take care of me before I can take care of anybody. I have to put myself first. And I raised two little girls on my own, you know, and that's a father. I had kids before or while I was in my addiction and really didn't spend any time with them. More or less just to pick them up from the skating ring and race to get them home so I can continue to get high. Um, Dependable, employable. That's something that I didn't do when I was actively using. I didn't work. I met a guy. I used to work for Elk River, and that's like working with gas and stuff like that right there. And I saw him not too long ago, and he said, "I remember who you are." He said, "You're Wednesday." And I said, "What?" He said, "You're Wednesday. You'd only show up on Wednesday." Oh man. But that's not me today. I'm every day, all day. And the thing about that is I like it. Actually, I love it. Um, so in 2013, I become the Lifeline Peer Project Coordinator for Region 5 South. This screen is not moving, or these slides are not moving. There we go. There we go. So what is the Lifeline Peer Project? We're still not moving. The Lifeline Peer Project was established to reduce the stigma related to the disease of addiction and to increase community support for policies that provide for treatment and recovery services. The project approaches include establishment of evidence-based addiction and recovery programs, additional presentations for civic groups, faith-based organizations, and community leaders to increase the understanding of the disease of addiction and support for recovery strategies. Establishment of evidence-based addiction and recovery programs. And you guys, I covered 13 counties here in Southern Middle Tennessee. And whenever I first started with Lifeline, the things that helped me to get to where I'm at, those things did not exist in rural Southern Middle Tennessee at all. There was only two recovery courts. There was no coalitions or anything like that. And you know, and I'm not. I would say that it's been like that across the board, across the entire state. And myself, as well as the other nine lifeliners, I think we now have 16, 15, 16, 10 lifeliners, six hybrids, five or six hybrids. Um, we've helped establish evidence-based addiction and recovery programs, such as recovery courts, coalitions, and things like that right there. Next slide, please. So we want to have a connection to recovery resources. And a lot of us are certified, well, actually all of us are certified peer recovery specialists. And we help others on the path to recovery from mental illness or substance abuse. We have firsthand experience with mental health or substance use disorder. And we offer support. We can provide support and understanding because we have that lived experience. All of us must have had at least or have at least 2 years of recovery or have dealt with mental health. Um, we all use our personal recovery story to help others. I just think that that makes a lot of sense for us to or for someone to connect a lot better is somebody having that same experience with habits, hurts, pains, and that sort of stuff. Promote self-determination, personal responsibility, and empowerment. Next slide. CPRS champion in your organization. How can you incorporate a certified peer recovery specialist? You can, you can put a certified peer recovery specialist into your congregation to become a point of contact person, a person of interest. If somebody comes into your congregation, they're needing recovery support services. You don't know how to talk to that individual, but that CPRS does. You want to provide referrals and recovery resources for individuals with substance use disorders and mental health issues. Be active in the congregation. Train others to help the congregation to understand the reality of mental health and addiction and provide support to those in need. And to me, what that right there looks like is that, you got someone that's in recovery, certified peer recovery specialist in your congregation. The congregation actually sees that individual, what they're dealing with each and every day, and how they're able to overcome those obstacles each and every day, and how they're utilizing the resources each and every day. And also, that certified peer recovery specialist can educate that congregation on how to talk to individuals outside of their congregation who may be struggling with substance use disorder. And that's reducing stigma. Next slide. Connection to other community resources. And this right here is what I love. This part right here. Um, because all of this right here are things that's helped me to get to where I'm at. And all of us lifeliners, we all have struggled with substance use disorder or mental health, and we all use our own little niche. And that's the beauty of Lifeline. We all use the things that's helped us to incorporate that into the communities that we serve. Um, So resources to access and leverage across your state might include community prevention coalitions, treatment and recovery courts, addiction recovery programs, art agencies, local health departments, health councils, health educators, local law enforcement agencies, nonprofit organizations, colleges, universities, community prevention coalitions. Man, let's go back. Let's go back. There we are. Whenever I started with Lifeline, I didn't know of any coalitions in the counties that I served. Um, but I always knew that or felt like that the community or the coalition that I worked with um, had some valuable resources and they put some valuable things in place for people to recover. Like, for instance, um, they helped me to facilitate a program in our community, MRT, juvenile MRT, um, through juvenile court. I thought that right there was amazing. And I thought it was amazing that I was able to facilitate those kids, helping those kids to learn to become honest, true, and accepting of themselves, identifying who they are on the inside, and learning to stay honest and true to that individual themselves. And looking back at that, um, from the past 12 years, I still have kids that, well, they're adults now, but still they're kids. They're always going to be my kids. Um, but I see them still to this day, and they are living prosperous lives. They're having kids, they're doing well with their families, things like that. And the goals that they had set working the program, they lived out those goals because they set up an action plan. Love it. So with the prevention coalitions, we didn't have any in the 13 counties besides two, and that was Franklin County and Coffee County. And right before COVID, I believe we had nine functioning coalitions, nine or 10 coalitions um, throughout the region. And COVID come, and some was just getting started up. COVID come, and it put a damper on a lot of things, and I'm sure that that's in a lot of different places. Um, Treatment and recovery courts, addiction recovery programs, local health departments, and health councils. The health departments, or let's just say the health councils and the community advisory board meetings, that's something that I was able to connect with a lot and to educate them, more or less being a face and a voice of someone that's in long-term recovery and letting them know um, what I did with Lifeline and what I was able to do. And, I built a lot of relationships right there. So it started out slow, but as time went by, just by being persistent and staying with it, um, those councils were able to utilize Lifeline services um, a lot. Health educators, law enforcement agencies. And I'm going to back up to treatment and recovery courts. Treatment and recovery courts, that's one of the things that we as Lifeliners do. We spend a lot of time going out to the different treatment providers across the state, building relationships with those individuals so that whenever someone who is struggling with substance use disorder and they're seeking treatment or recovery support services, because we built that relationship with the different treatment providers across the state, we can better serve those individuals who connect with us with treatment, regardless if they have insurance or not. We can see if it's going to be something long term for them, dual diagnosis, faith based or not. And, you know, most of these individuals that we connect with, they don't have any insurance. So, I think it takes a special person to be able to connect with these treatment providers and let them know that, hey, this right here is the population that I deal with. But, hey, you help me out and you help this individual out, then, whenever I get some insurance or whatnot, I'll send them to you. You scratch my back a little bit and I'll scratch yours. Sometimes that's just what we got to do. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get that individual the help that they need. Um, Local law enforcement agencies, it was, I remember walking up to talk to the judge whenever I first got into recovery court. And there was a detective, one of the detectives that arrested me. And I could hear him say, "Judge," as I was walking up, "Alan's attitude sure has changed." And just hearing that made all the difference in the world to me because my attitude had changed. It had changed tremendously for the better. Reaching out to nonprofit organizations, colleges, and universities. And we have one colleague that's started his own collegiate initiative across the state. Next slide, please. So there are 17 Lifeline project coordinators. Each are located in substance abuse prevention coalitions across the state. Lifeline outcomes, we have started over 6,000 or have had over 6,000, let's just say 6,400 recovery trainings. We've referred over, and I think these numbers here are a little outdated, but I'll say we've referred right at 16,000 people to treatment and recovery. And I would also say that that right there is probably selling ourselves short. And we've started over, let's just say 680 new recovery meetings. And that's a picture of some of us lifeliners. Some of the faces have changed because of COVID. It's been kind of hard to get everybody together at one time. Next slide, please. So fighting stigma to save lives. And I think I heard Miss Burks talking about stigma in her presentation. So substance use in Tennessee, nearly 6 people in Tennessee die of drug-related overdose each day. It's a lot. 82% of drug overdose deaths in Tennessee involved opioids. Almost half of the general public know someone who is living with an opioid addiction. And despite increasing access to telemedicine, opioid-related deaths have dramatically increased during the COVID-19 pandemic. I know that during the pandemic, opioid deaths, overdoses, overdose deaths, uh, there's been at least 4 kids, 4 to 5 kids within the past year that has overdosed and died that I know. For the past 15 years, there's been somebody that has been struggling with substance use disorder that has died. So we want to focus on stigma reduction. Stigma generates multiple barriers for people with a substance use disorder to seek treatment. I know whenever I was going through it, it was hard for me to, you know, ask for treatment, ask for help because of that stigma of what somebody's going to think about me. And I thought I was a real good athlete. And whenever I got hurt, I played hurt. I didn't want to come out of the game because, if I come out of the game, I was soft. I was a punk, sissy. I go into treatment, I'm soft. You're a punk, you're a sissy. You ain't from here. People with substance use disorder can progress their path to recovery and still be faced with these barriers. Even whenever I got clean, he's never gonna make it. He's always gonna be a crackhead. He's always gonna be that alcoholic. He's always no good. You can't trust him. Stigma related to addiction often overlaps and intensifies with other forms of stigma, discrimination, bias, such as those related to race, class, gender, sexual orientation, occupation, and others. Next slide. So here's contact information. Here is a map of all the lifeliners across the state. And you guys get those numbers that I just put out? I think Dr. Burks, with the faith-based initiatives, we just brought in the hybrids. So we've had the hybrids right at a year. But a lot of that stuff, including the hybrids, that's 17 people that have put those numbers up. 17 individuals that have put numbers like that up. And I don't want to take anything away from the other lifeliners that's been with us and moved on to bigger and greater things. But that's very few individuals that's made that impact across the state, that's established these evidence-based programs across the state. Just imagine what this state would be like if we got everybody on board. Wow. Imagine what it would be like if everybody had the heart to just do what's right and quit turning the cheek whenever you see somebody that's down and out and hurting. Just because you walk past somebody, you too stuck up to even speak to them. And that's something I've been practicing a lot of is, regardless of how I feel, you know, I try to acknowledge somebody that's walking past me, make them speak to me. And they, most of the time, they speak back with a smile on their face. And that makes me smile, regardless of how I'm feeling. So hopefully you guys have had an opportunity and a little bit of time to be able to find the lifeliner that may be in your area. I know that Lincoln Kaufman is over there in the Memphis area, along with Chris Smith, Diane Sherrod, Brandon Powell, and Sarah. I know those guys are taking real good care of you over there. Next slide, please. So we are out of the Office of the Faith-Based Initiatives Connection, and we have the faith-based community coordinators, Project Lifeline. We got the Tennessee Recovery Navigators, and we have the regional overdose prevention specialists. And some of our lifeliners, they're doing multiple jobs here. And I'd say that in some sense, we all are doing all four of these here. So kudos to the guys that spend a lot of time doing Lifeline navigators, as well as the regional overdose specialists, as well as the faith-based community coordinators. Next slide, please. Here's some more effects of stigma. We have shame on social isolation. For those addicted, reduces a whole person to someone who is broken, with little or no self-esteem. Less than 20% of Americans are willing to associate closely with someone who is addicted to prescription drugs as a friend, colleague, or neighbor. And that's crazy. For some reason, I find myself to connect more with somebody that has more of a disadvantage at that particular point in time than someone that seems to be prospering pretty well. If you ever notice, if you ever just give somebody a hand and you don't just tell them what to do, you show them and you walk with them while they're doing it and you do it with them. Hey, that same individual could be sitting right here or where you're at. Stigma is something. I can remember doing a presentation somewhere. I'm not going to call any names or any locations, but I was doing a presentation somewhere, and I mean, this still bothers me to this day. And we were talking about reducing stigma, and when the panel discussion was over with, and someone had came up to me and they had heard me talk, and they're looking at me. And they see a black man, and I know I'm country as all get out. When you look at me, you're gonna think that my accent's gonna be something that what it's not. But that individual come up to me and started talking to me and said, you're not cut like us." What? You're not cut like us because of the way I talk? So I'm not black. Okay. So now whenever I talk, sometimes I think about that time right there. But I've learned that, I know who I am and I know whose I am. So I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm okay with the way that I talk. I like it actually. It kind of feels weird right now talking to an audience I can't see. All I can see is me. It's strange, but it's okay. An individual is not seeking help for addiction. Around 20% of those addicted cite stigma as a reason not to seek treatment. That is so true. Next slide, please. So what are we doing? We're putting on to raise awareness about Lifeline, and what are we doing to, show our communities that recovery is real and that we do recover. A lot of it is just being a face and a voice of somebody that's in long-term recovery and just doing what I'm doing right now. running my mouth, talking about where I've been, what I've been through, and what I'm doing and where I'm going to. But we put on a lot of town hall events, community educational events, work with the judicial systems, working with them to defer or offer diversions instead of incarcerating them. We put on a lot of different faith forums across the state. We've had a faith forum in every single county, in all 95 counties across the state. And I'd say kudos to everybody that's on Dr. Burks's team here, because we all have put in a lot of hours and a lot of time helping Dr. Burks to make this possible. Recovery Fest, celebrating recovery. We've had Recovery Fest ever since I've been a Lifeliner. We've done something in Franklin County. I try to incorporate the same things in the other counties that I cover, just showing them what it's about. We've done health fairs, sharing resources, social media. We're all on social media, sharing our stories, sharing our successes, and also letting people know that, hey, we're here. CPRS, we're here. If you are struggling, if you need help, we're here. Reach out to us. And I'm not just speaking for me, but for the rest of my colleagues, I know that we don't just get calls with our direct phone lines, Messenger, Facebook. People reach out to us all the time. They're going to find a way to get a hold of us. They don't have our phone number, but they see us on Facebook. It's pretty awesome, I think. And public speaking, sharing our story of recovery. I want to back up to the judicial system and law enforcement, because I think these slides are about reducing stigma. We didn't have any recovery courts throughout the region whenever I first started. Before COVID, well, actually, we got Franklin County, Coffee County right now. We also have Lawrence County as well as Maury County, and those counties cover multiple counties over there. I say Western, Southern, Middle Tennessee. But the judicial system and law enforcement, DCS, building that relationship with those individuals, being a face and a voice of somebody that's in long-term recovery, reducing stigma to those guys. Man, I think it's pretty awesome whenever you have someone who used to chase you down because you're out here doing bad, call you up on your personal phone saying, I got an individual pulled over and they need help. They're struggling with addiction. Can you help them to get into treatment? And if they can get into treatment right now, and if they go, these charges may not even stick. Hang on, give me a minute. Within 5 minutes, you give that officer a call back and you got a place for that individual to go to treatment. These things are happening today across the state. And this didn't happen before Lifeline. And the same thing goes with judges. Judges are doing the same thing. DCS is doing the same thing. We have to get people well. If we want our communities to survive, we have to help those individuals who are dying. And all it takes is for you to reach your hand out and say, come on, brother. Come on, sister. I got you. You think, hey, it's not my responsibility. I ain't gonna cuss on here, but you're a lie, because it is your responsibility. Because you know as well as I do that you got a family member or a loved one or a dear friend, somebody that you know that's struggling with substance use. And if you don't help that individual, and especially if you got kids, young kids, if you don't help that individual that's hurting, sooner or later, your little young kid gonna be affected by it, if not you. Next slide, please. So here's some pictures of some of the things that we as Lifeliners have done. That there are some community events like Recovery Fest. We got Recovery is the New High celebration. There are some town hall meetings, some faith-based gatherings here and up here in the top right. I got some little kids. I know the Recovery is the New High bags. I asked our local community to start collecting toiletries so that we can fill those bags up and give them to the individuals going out to treatment or the different treatment providers that didn't have these things. But for those individuals going to treatment that didn't have any toiletries and stuff, and just give them some information, and also, you know, just give them something positive to think about, because recovery is the new high. It is for me. I always felt like that, and that's why it stuck to me. You know, I'm a new person. I'm a different person, and I have a great relationship with God. And I always felt like that if you live and practice true recovery, then you're gonna receive the Most High. And by receiving the Most High, I feel like, you know, I'm highly favored. I feel like that He's always gonna be there. He's not gonna let me down, no matter whatever it is that I go through. That He's gonna get me through it. I just don't need to give up. Next slide, please. So you guys can take your phone and scan the QR code, um, jump on our website, get all the information and stuff that you need. And I think I may have like 2-3 minutes for questions. No questions? Good. See y'all. No, I'm good. We got like 2 minutes.
Hi, Alan. Can you see me?
A little bit.
How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you.
Good, good. Well, thank you for coming out today and giving this presentation. We really appreciate you dedicating your time and efforts into being here today. Is it okay if we just ask you a couple questions from the chat?
I think so.
All right, perfect. So somebody asked, do you think that job placement services would benefit people in recovery?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because that, you know, I mean, that right there would actually help that place of employment, because, you know, they'll be able to recognize firsthand someone who is struggling with substance use disorder, and, you know, just going over to that individual and saying, hey man, you know, how are you doing? You know, I've seen a sudden shift in your behaviors a little bit, man, and, you know, I recognize that. You know, I've had some of the similar things, you know, behaviors or whatnot in the past, and, you know, that strike up a conversation with that individual. Then, you know, you never know, hey man, I got some great resources for you. Also, you can talk with that individual. Let's just say a certified peer recovery specialist can talk to that employer and say, hey, I got some individual or some resources right here that maybe we should put up. You know, somebody's going to walk by, they're going to see it, pick it up, read that information, and, you know, secretively or whatnot, you know, they may ask somebody for help. So yes.
Great, thank you for that answer. And a couple of people have actually been asking, how do you become a Lifeline peer specialist?
I don't know. it fell into my hands. You know, I continued to stay clean and sober, and God found a way for me. That's all I know. Dr. Monty Burks, he's gonna more or less be over who is gonna become a Lifeliner. So I would say, you know, get with Dr. Burks on that.
Great, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming out, like I said, and yeah, just joining us for the summit and teaching us more about this.
Hey, I love it, and thank you. And Jack Wyatt, thank you, brother. I love you, man. Thank you for giving me the opportunity and the space to be able to come on here and talk to everyone, but hear no one besides Olivia here. Now all the nervous jitters, they're gone.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate it again.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You. And now we're just going to go into our break, and we'll meet back here in 5 minutes.